Morning, Bill.
Good morning, Mark. How are you today?
It's a bit milder today, so not too bad.
Well, it is. Looking out the window here, it's the sun shining, which is good. And, you know, I'm always complaining about rowing on the barman at 6:30 in the morning and
It's self-inflicted is all I say.
Freezing. But this morning I went for a walk, 5 o'clock actually, and I went out and I lasted 2 blocks and down came the rain. So quickly came back and into the garage onto the walking machine. So that's the start of the day for me.
Very good. And lots happening in the world at the moment.
Oh, yeah. It's not getting any easier, is it?
It isn't. Right? And it's interesting. I've got a good friend of mine who's travelling around the States on holiday, and he sent me a text message a couple of days ago, said he's been there 30 times, and this is the first time he went into a bottle shop to buy a 6-pack of beer, and they refused to serve him because he wasn't an American.
Well, there you go.
And that's amazing. That just, anyway.
Well, things are changing and who knows where we'll end up, but we just got to focus on our little patch down here.
We are.
And look after what we've got.
And talking about little patch and people that look after the area, who are we talking to today?
Today we're talking to Andrew Hamilton, and I haven't met Andrew before, but I came across an article somewhere recently, either on LinkedIn or in the press, about a venture that Andrew's involved in, and it's called Euca Build, Andrew?
Euca Build.
Euca Build.
Yeah.
And it's about modular homes, and we recently, Mark, came across some other issue about modular homes, and it's certainly an area of the building thing that we don't know much about, so we thought we'd get Andrew in and talk about this latest project.
And his life story.
That's right. And Andrew is a Geelong boy, but we'll soon find out about that as we go along.
So welcome, Andrew.
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
So we always start with, where was primary school?
I went to the first part of primary school, went to St Robert's Primary in Newtown, and then transitioned over to Geelong College in grade 4.
And stayed there for high school?
I stayed there all the way through till the end, yes.
Yeah. And while you were at high school, any jobs?
Some people might know, my father, David Hamilton, ran a lot of different types of businesses, but ultimately ended up in property development. So a lot of my jobs as a sort of teenager growing up was helping out with some of those various businesses. One of the earlier ones was he ran a company called the Australian Home Builders and Renovators Guide. And that was a printed publication, and my job was to take the magazine and put a leaflet in it and put it in a plastic bag and stick the address label on it. And I would do thousands of those a day, I think, for like 8 cents each or something like that. So,
well, I was going to ask, was that free child labour or paid child labour?
No, there was some lessons in there as well, so you had to put a number to it. So it was either that, or I remember installing a lot of those corkboard drop ceilings. Yes. Funny thing is that, Dad used to buy warehouses in the 90s and try and make them look like they weren't warehouses, try to make them look like professional office blocks. We still own some of those warehouses now, and we definitely took out a lot of those elements trying to make them look like office blocks, and we make them look like warehouses, and now they make the office blocks look like warehouses. So,
it's amazing, isn't it?
All right, so having finished at the college, as they call it, I can't get the name wrong.
I'll get a letter saying that I didn't put the data in front of it.
That's right, no, my brother finished off his schooling there. So what was next after leaving there?
So I got into design school up at Monash University in Caulfield, and then lived up on campus up there at Mannix in Clayton. So I studied there for 3 years, doing a Bachelor of Design with a specialisation in visual communication.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so something just a bit different, I thought.
What did you think that was going to lead you to?
For me, it was where I wanted to start.
Yeah.
I was sort of looking at the world and going, well, there's a lot of different opportunities out there, and I'd sort of learnt a lot, obviously, with some of my upbringing, and I thought that the visual medium was very interesting and was changing so quickly and becoming so powerful, and it was just sort of something that I was really interested in to discover and as my start point in my career.
All right.
So what was your first real job then out of that?
My first real job was at a company called First Media. They're still around. They did a lot of the street press magazines for music and fashion at the time. So Beat magazine was one of the music magazines they do, and Fashion Journal they do as well. And we worked on a number of other magazines for General Pants and David Jones, and so it was pretty cool. I thought it was pretty cool. It was a pretty hard job to get. And, it was design industry in the early 2000s. So, 9 till 11 o'clock at night sometimes into the early hours of the morning on deadline. And, very particular design development. Everything had to be a certain way and very sort of high end. So it was a hard slog.
Yeah, interesting. And so what led you to the States? Because I'm stalking you on LinkedIn. I see you've spent a lot of time in the States. Was that second or third job, or just a change?
I left First Media. I had an opportunity to do some TV commercials. My sister at the time was working with the company that made the Crazy Frog ringtone. I don't know if you remember that one.
Yeah.
And I was wanting to move from print into television or into motion graphics. And so I got an opportunity to do some TV commercials. And so then we set up a little business doing TV commercials. And then I met a girl, and she got a job in Michigan, and we did a bit of a long distance. And then I went over there, and she goes, "Well, let's move to New York." And I thought, "Why not?" I was 24 at the time, and I had a lot of energy, and I thought, I was living in Melbourne, and I wanted to do something interesting, so we made the leap, and I moved over there without a job and thought I'd just figure it out as I went.
So Andrew, was that in the times of the good New York? Or
that was in. So I had, in relation to your earlier sort of, I think I had the entire Obama presidencies whilst I was over there. I might have had a little bit. It was actually quite interesting. I think Obama was inaugurated about 2 months after I moved over, and seeing that. It was quite an experience. I find in Australia, they get voted in and they shuffle off to some room somewhere and then they walk out and they're Prime Minister. But seeing that sort of experience, and everyone goes to the bars and watches that was quite an amazing sort of like, wow, these people have quite a lot of pride.
It's interesting. I was in the States when Obama did his acceptance speech.
Yeah.
And I was standing in a bar watching it on this big TV there was probably 60 or 70 people. But the thing that always stuck in my mind is I turned at one stage and all the serving staff and the cleaners had come out because they were black.
Yeah.
And they were standing there with tears running down their eyes watching this on TV. Never forget that.
Yeah, okay.
Because it was a big moment. It was a huge change.
Oh, the level of... It's funny, the level of like what he starts to talk about. I'm like, wow, you're really going up to some big, like humanity type. Like I think for us, it's it's this tax or it's that tax or it's flittering around the edges of this policy or that. And they're like, wow, you're shooting for the stars there. Wow.
Patriotism comes in many shapes and forms. And in America, it's very diverse. And I remember Liz and I think we were in a bar somewhere. When the Iraq War, we were in the States when the Iraq War started, and they invaded Iraq, and the bars were packed, and everyone's just standing around these TV sets.
Wow.
And then another time I was over there in Salt Lake City when the space shuttle blew up on the way back to Earth, and we did a tour of the Mormon temple there, and they've got this temple or auditorium, whatever, church, for want of another word, and they don't have any electronics because the sound is perfect. You can stand at the back of it, and they did a demonstration. They tore up a piece of paper, and you could hear it clearly down the back. But then they had a memorial service because of that space shuttle crash, and the Mormon choir came out. Now, I'm not a Mormon. I was there as an interloper. And you sat in that area, or in the area you were designated, right down the back, and the hair just stood up on the back of your neck.
Wow. Good experience.
Just incredible stuff.
So did you enjoy New York?
I loved it. Yeah, look, as a 20-something, like I just had energy. So it was a great space to sort of, run around in circles and enjoy my 20s. And I loved the energy. Like I've worked in some other places around the traps, and I really sort of found something that was unique there. It's like if you just have energy and ideas, people will get behind you. They might have no idea who you are. If you walk into a room and you're like, why don't we do this? Everyone's like, great, who is this guy? And it's, I from a design point of view, I wasn't, and I was really into music as well. And I was like, it might not be like my sort of aesthetic home, but I loved the energy of the place. And that's what really grabbed me. And that's why I just sort of was like, I just want to keep being around this.
So what sort of roles did you have there?
So I started off, predominantly over the time I was there, I was sort of freelancing in the design agency. So as I said, I'd started in print, sort of ended up in TV. This is a stage that, Vimeo and YouTube were starting to really kick off. So I started working with some brands doing like brand videos. I did some film clips. I worked on the Coldplay Viva La Vida film clip
cool.
with a guy, Hype Williams, which was interesting. Got to meet Kanye at one of the things before he was crazy. And then I worked with a watch company. They had a really interesting they'd done this watch design, which they'd patented sort of this linear thing. It was like an abacus. And so instead of a circle, you get a block for each hour. And so this guy had sort of patented this really interesting watch. So I worked there, did wallet and fragrance and belt designs and videos and sort of just everything, kind of getting involved in that. I did a lot of motion graphic stuff like TV, commercials. And then over the time, by the end, because I sort of started to work in so many different mediums, sort of towards 2013, 2014, I got one job doing immersive experience, which is something that's really becoming a big sort of deal now.
It's for kids at school now. It's become a big issue.
Yeah. So it was sort of about immersive experiences are about sort of, you're using print and TV and websites and interactive, and you're creating environments where there's, the technology and mediums are a lot more hidden to make a singular experience. And so we did a project with Adidas to do like a brand activation, and then a big one was a sales centre for a Zaha Hadid apartment building on the High Line. And it was a $500 million apartment building off the plan, as we say. And they wanted to build the best sales centre that anyone's ever built. So we followed their sort of, property sales process and tried to optimise it as much as possible with technology. And just sort of, but not really being like, it has to be high tech. And so what we built was a big sort of, it would have been about 150 square metre immersive room where there was projection on all of the walls, and you could recreate any apartment. You could walk in there and recreate any apartment in the building. You can walk into where the pool would be, into where the garage would be, in the foyer, and it was animated, and we had a iPad that we controlled it all. Anyway,
it
was
cool.
Very detailed. I spent many late nights, and I was the design director on that project. But coming from a property background, and I was on the verge of moving home, that I was like, this is a great thing to be
brilliant
involved
concept,
with, because I love that property process. And Dad always sort of taught us to like visualize how things could be, and it was kind of working with really with amazing sort of technology.
Andrew, we talk about sliding doors, tipping points.
Yeah.
Something slid you into radio and DJ. Tell us a little bit about that.
When I was I grew up in Geelong, and electronic music was a thing I discovered as a teenager, and it was sort of really the late 90s, it was really starting to kick off. And I just loved it as something I just never really, it was just so new and different, and, and it had this energy about it. So I started DJing as a child, and I spent my money on equipment and records. And when I moved to Melbourne, I was like, great, I'm going to get into this. So I started, trying to get gigs, and then I got a radio show, which I had for 3 or 4 years in Melbourne. Then a friend and I ran music parties, and so it was a lot of fun for a while. And
then you grew up. Is that right?
Look, I've still got the setup out in the bungalow at home. And then, when I moved to the US, I also had some friends over there, and we ran parties for a few years over there.
Yeah.
And it's like it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of work, a lot of marketing. It's very much business-like, and I find that industry at that stage was it's like disruption, right? The music industry was being disrupted by a new type of sound, and you're sort of like really that's just happening right in front of you, and that's always driven me in different parts of my career. Is like, where is the change happening, and how do I get involved?
Yeah.
So who's your favourite band?
My favourite band? Oh, that's a
or from the electronic music days.
Look, the first one that comes to mind is an artist called Aphex Twin, and he's out of the UK. And I'm reading a book about him at the moment, and he sort of was really like, everyone's sort of very set in their genres, or was back then, and he was someone who really came out and just every song was a different genre, and he kind of like, all the frameworks of the industry, I really felt like he just broke. And those people might not be remembered as like he's quite well known, but it's the people that come behind that sort of make a better go of it.
Well, every era brings that, and I think I go back to my earliest memory of someone that did that was Elvis Presley. Tells you a bit about my background, doesn't it?
So what brought you back to Australia?
Look, I hit my 30s, and the energy that I had over there. Like, New York's a great place to spend that time, but I started to look at. I'm just like, well, I suppose the shine started to wear off. It was never a forever place for me. I mean, who knows what would have happened whilst I was over there, but like I look at home and I'm like, this is just a beautiful lifestyle. Like, New York is ambition.
Yep.
And that's what it does in spades. But ambition is a creature that will never be satisfied. And so I'm just like, well, this isn't bringing happiness. I worked in a dream job, and I saw the people running the companies, and, and I was sort of like, I don't know if I want that life. Like, you're doing everything I've wanted to do, but I don't see that as something I want. Like, I don't need endless ambition. I just want to go and live a nice life. And Australia is just such a beautiful place, and has, it's been so interesting sort of coming back. Like, early on, I was trying to buy flowers for a flower subscription for my mum, and I spoke to this florist who used to offer this product, and she's like, oh, I don't offer it anymore. And I was like, why not? And she's like, I just don't like doing it. And I was like, oh, but you scale it, you hire someone, you do this. And she's like, I just like doing this on my own, and I like doing this. And I was like, you're just enjoying what you're doing. You're not trying. Not everything's about being scaling. And I'm so impressed with that. Of course, there's great businesses, but there's a focus on lifestyle and balance in Australia. I mean, some people might think it's getting a bit more stressful, but I think that was just looking at that, and I just said, I'm not going to spend my time here. I want to go home. I miss my family. I miss my friends. Like, my friends didn't care what job I had. Yep. But in New York, you get a lot more popular.
People care
when you're doing well.
Yep.
So
talking about flowers, Andrew, we did a podcast with Amanda at Smelly's.
Oh yeah.
Right, and that she fulfills what you just said.
Yep.
About the florist experience.
Yeah.
Is she doesn't want to get any bigger.
No, she has her passion, and she loves her life.
She owns what she does.
Yep.
Right, from a point of view of she owns her own market. She's not under other than deadline pressure. Yep, but that's her life.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's
and
interesting.
She loves it, and she's good at it.
She's good at it. So coming back, what did you drop into?
Well, I came back, and I was I sort of I have this sort of process I would go through every year at that stage, where I do like a year in review, and I do sort of like what happened in the year, what I want to do in the year going forwards, and I sort of do an analysis of where the opportunities are. And what I sort of realised coming home to Australia is, like, in the US, I wanted to get involved in markets that were leading markets over there, and in Australia, it's the same. I'm like, what's Australia good at? And I chose two pathways, and I said, okay, either it's e-commerce or it's property. And so I got a job doing something more in property, but then I had an e-commerce opportunity. So I sort of
Did both.
Yeah, I did. I sort of did both, and that's sort of where I feel like my current business is a bit of a combination. But I started, and I had an opportunity to build some e-commerce projects with my sisters actually. So I'd worked with them on and off over the years, and so we started building some beauty brands and health and wellness brands, and selling them on like Facebook. Facebook marketing was
Yep.
sort of early stage then, but it was an incredible process in developing. You know, I knew I didn't want to be in, agency land for advertising. It's like you're just getting paid for your time, and it's just a bit frustrating. You know, like I always wanted to do something where it's like you're rewarded for the success of something rather than just how much time you spent on it.
So you're selling the brands separately now, or are they still through Facebook Marketplace? Where have they evolved to?
It evolved out of that. It's all been sort of finally, it kind of exploded. They had one product, and then we built sort of 4 or 5 other ones, and then over time some of those have been sold off, and we built a platform that builds brands. That was called Supernova. Some of those have sort of been sold off, and I believe the last brand has sort of been we sold it off to a US.
Yeah, cool.
Well, Andrew, I want to get
Yeah.
to what the reason we want to get you here today
Yeah.
is about your current, I guess, new venture,
Yep.
which in layman's terms is modular homes or tiny homes, but it's not just the stereotype.
Yep.
And it's an area that's really starting to take off.
Yep.
And particularly when you listen to all the press issues about lack of housing, and then we combine with social housing and all sorts of things. And in the tourism industry, eco-type housing, high-end sort of smaller housing for Airbnbs and whatever it is really starting to move.
Yep.
It's been held back a little bit because of the aftermath of COVID and everything else, but I feel it's going to move forward. So tell us a bit about this latest venture.
Yeah, so interestingly, after doing the e-commerce brands for a while, I got involved with my brother Cam doing the Hamilton Group stuff. So obviously sort of Federal Mills, Pivot City, they've got the stuff in town with Brights and the region and the like. And it was really interesting getting into the weeds with property and property development and pricing and dealing with customers and having those conversations. And over that time with my experience, I was sort of like, there's products here that I like. This is a massive industry that in some ways feels a bit sort of clunky and not always customer focused. I'm not saying that about Hamilton Group, but it's just like, and that was one thing we always did at Hamilton Group. How do we make this more customer focused? But in general, how it works. So I kept sort of stewing on that, and in parallel, my love coming home, my love for regional Australia, and feeling like regional Australia can perform a lot better than it does, and looking at the tourism space, I thought, well, there's got to be a better way for regional tourism operators like wineries and like farm stays and regional Airbnbs to be able to get good quality accommodation on their sites. And so I really started, and during COVID it kind of escalated when I was starting to look at blocks of land. I think a lot of people were. I'm trapped in my house on Domain looking up a block of land because that's just where I want to be. And I thought, well, how do I get housing on this? And so I've always been interested in modular and prefab, and so there's a few elements of convergence there where I thought, well, I want to develop a product that makes it easier for people to get small sized accommodation and cabins and small homes, but good quality, predominantly designed for regional Australia. So I'm looking at tourism operators. I'm looking at backyard dwellings, so for people who have a larger property that might be used for family or Airbnbs. I'm looking at some sort of disadvantaged accommodation projects, and also sort of looking at sort of small-scale residential community projects as well, which has been really interesting. So Euca, it's short for eucalyptus, and again, it's something I wanted to make a very sort of Australian-focused brand. I wanted to design for the Australian landscape. I find a lot of other cabin and small home designs are obviously it's a Nordic cabin, or it's a urban cabin, or it's a, like they're taking cues from elsewhere. And I thought, we want to really design something for Australia, and the Australian environment, the Australian colours, the Australian aesthetic. So our cabins are all pre-designed. You can go on our website. You can customise them all. They're all pre-priced. So the customer experience has really been a focus on, we don't hide anything. Everything's up front. You get the pricing there. You can get solar and fireplaces and the likes. And then, we take customers on a journey to be able to put them on their sites.
And I noticed on your website you've got a step-by-step process that you spell out to people who are interested.
Yep.
So, here's first step, second step, and you do the whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
And are your homes, they're not built on site, are they? They're modular homes that are delivered. Is that correct?
Yes, so it's a process called volumetric prefabricated sort of housing. So it's assembled entirely in the factory. So all of the fixtures and fittings, all the building, it's all locked up. And so it comes delivered to site on a truck, and the build process is less than 100 days. So it comes fully delivered on site, and depending on how your plumbing, if your plumbing's already been sort of, channeled in and that sort of stuff, you can pretty much use it the day it arrives. So from a site disruption perspective, it's sort of a couple of days, as opposed to if you were to do this, and I know it's a particular issue, we were talking about caravan parks and also with wineries where, you can have up to 6 months of on-site disruption if you're building these things on site. So how does that upset your existing operations where you've got people trying to come for a nice holiday and you've got construction and construction waste flowing around the site, you've got deliveries coming to site, and also particularly in more remote areas, like getting quality trades to come to site. You've got a good tiler. The tiler's coming to do 12 square metres of tiling. It all sort of adds up, and it can be difficult.
Good luck.
Yeah, exactly. So in our factory, which is based in Geelong, we have high quality trades, they're local trades, and, they do this stuff, and they're doing, a lot more than 12 square metres a day. And so there's lots of cost efficiencies there, but also quality and the lack of site disruption.
This is really a convergence of everything you've done in a way, isn't it?
Yes.
You're about branding and design and e-commerce and property, and it's all come together.
Yeah. Look, I love property. I've grown up around it, and I love product development. I've spent a lot of time in product development and understanding customers and very much in industries where it's like, forget what the status quo is. What does this need to be?
Yep.
And I really feel like prefab, there's a lot of, fanfare around prefab, and there's been fanfare around prefab for over 50 years. You've got to watch with some of these disruptive industries that someone thinks, this is just going to change everything overnight. It's a long process, and it doesn't just replace everything in one go. So looking at a small unit, I think encapsulates the greatest efficiencies of prefab. It's when people are trying to do custom, 2-story, 6-bedroom houses, and they want a curved wall and, module site. It actually starts to, some of the benefits start to fall away.
Some
at this
builders
stage.
love that because it's called variation.
Exactly. And that's something that, I might, get a few nasty letters, but, that's something where I'm showing the variations up front. I want the customer to be aware of, here's your price, and not just hide behind, well, we'll see, and we'll start, and then it's this, and then it's this. And
that's good.
With the, everyone's talking about that sort of cost of building going up and the uncertainty around that. I talk to a lot of customers, and they're like, well, I just need to know what it's going to cost. It's as much telling them that, but also developing a process that sometimes can protect them from themselves.
Yep.
I've had people come and go, can you change this? Can you change this? And I'm like, I can, but it will be expensive, and it defeats the purpose of why we're talking. So you sort of set parameters, on both sides. You want the customer to have their customized journey without them just falling into a well of endless decisions and uncertainty. So,
well, Mark, remember we interviewed our friend Russell from Melishef Homes, and he has a second brand called Q Homes, I think it was, at that stage. Well, I might have got that wrong, but he uses the same philosophy. You buy one of this, not custom built homes, which he specialises in, but if you buy one of these branded homes, you get the finished product.
Yeah.
Right? There's nothing extra. It's all in there. not like we often joke, Mark, about some of the bulk builders. Oh, you want a stove in the kitchen, do you? Oh, that's going to cost you this.
Yeah.
Well, you want 2 power points in the bedroom.
Sure. I mean, and I've been in that situation. We're not like working in design agencies. You're working for a customer, and they're saying we want this, this, and this, and you do have to protect them from themselves sometimes. You know, like, and you do have to say that's a bad decision, and that's a decision that in a large organisation that you're dealing with, that individual might have a preference for purple.
Yep.
But purple's a bad
Bad
colour
colour.
to use in this project, you know, so...
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
finding you, Andrew, Eucla built, EUCLA built,
EUCA,
EUCA built,
built,
.com.
no, EUCA built.au.
.au. Oh,
Yeah,
cool. Okay,
yeah.
so you've gone to the
If you
.au.
go to the .com.au, it'll just redirect you to
It'll
.au.
okay,
Yeah, well, go
brilliant.
and have a look because there's a lot
Fantastic.
of some really good info
There's
on
a
that
good-
site.
So brilliant.
yeah.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah,
Thanks for
amazing.
telling
Thanks
us
for
your
your time.
journey. A
I
really
appreciate
interesting
it.
story. And go and have a look, folks, because
will
there's some
do.
great designs on there.
Thank you, Andrew. I have 100 more questions, but Mark, we've run out of time.
We've run out of time.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.